Hey everyone, Nick here, and welcome back to The Last Senate, a series about people who in their fight for power, glory, and money turned ancient Rome into their own personal Game of Thrones. Consider this your step-by-step guide to destroying a republic. Let's travel back in time. It's 111 BCE. Rome is on the brink of revolt. Citizens are outraged by the greed and bribery of their esteemed senators. Leading the crusade against corruption is the people's tribune, Gaius Memmius. He accuses the Roman Republic's consul and his accomplices of selling out for bribes to the Numidian king, signing a shameful and unjust peace treaty. Gaius Memmius calls for a public assembly in the Forum. He addresses the angry citizens, holding them back from riots and violence, demanding that the criminals be judged by the force of Roman law. After the tribune's speech, the Numidian king himself is supposed to speak at the assembly. Rome has guaranteed him safe passage, demanded his testimony, and summoned him to the city. Many lives will depend on his words. The tension in the Forum is so thick you could cut it with a knife. The king rises to answer, and the noise instantly dies down. But then, another people's tribune, Gaius Baebius, jumps up from his seat and shouts, "I impose my veto! I forbid you to answer, O king!" The Numidian king's name was Jugurtha. Episode 2. The Man Who Wanted to Buy Rome. A quick note. I know many of you are dying to know what happened next with Sulla. I promise I'll tell that story. He's one of our two main protagonists, but not today. This was my plan from the beginning, and I'll explain why I made this bold choice in a separate post. But I promise this will be the only exception. From now on, if an episode ends on the cliffhanger, you'll get your answer exactly 1 week later. Your feedback means everything to me, even more than help spreading the podcast, though I definitely need that too. Huge thanks for all your comments and suggestions. You're helping me make this podcast better. Now, let's return to the past. Looking at maps of Rome's expanding borders, you'd think these Romans did nothing but conquer neighboring countries. But that's not quite true, and sometimes not true at all. At the Battle of Zama, the decisive clash between Rome and Carthage, almost a century before our story, King Massinissa of Eastern Numidia fought on Rome's side. After victory, as a thank you, he received the lands of his rival, the king of Western Numidia who'd fought for the other side. Numidia was North Africa, the coast of modern Algeria and about half of Tunisia. He also received the title Friend and Ally of the Roman People. Oh, and the Western king's wife, too. Talk about getting half the kingdom and the princess, Roman style. After the Third War and Carthage's final destruction, Rome didn't annex the defeated kingdom's territory. They only took the capital and surrounding land, or what was left after they destroyed it and salted the earth. Rome gave most of former Carthaginian territory to their allied Numidian kingdom. Rome wasn't hungry for expansion. The city had strong "Romans belong here and only here" sentiments. There was zero talk about intentionally spreading culture or turning conquered peoples into Romans. One of our heroes from episode 1, Gaius Marius, was born in Arpinum, 60 miles from Rome. Many respected Romans refused to consider him a real Roman. Sure, you're technically Roman, you sit in the Senate, but you're from Arpinum. You're not one of us. Damn carpetbaggers. No, Romans could leave the city for the provinces. Their children would be Romans, but if your ancestors weren't from here, legally you're Roman, sure, you even sit in the Senate, but you're not our kind. Good old Roman nationalism. Remember episode 1? Romans even denied citizenship to their Italian allies, people they'd lived and fought alongside for centuries. What chance did Carthaginians, Spaniards, and others have? Direct annexation of provinces, the first happening just 130 years before our events, was always justified only by absolute necessity, sparking heated Senate debates. Unanimous agreement? Forget about it. At least, that's how it was in our story's time. Even if we conquered something, that didn't mean the inhabitants suddenly became Romans. They were barbarians. Always were, always would be. Let them learn Latin, trade in local markets and keep to themselves. Local chiefs and kings kept self-governance in their cities. We'd make alliance treaties with them. Those who rebelled against Rome's authority and our tax collectors? We'd take their land and give it to the right people. Respectable people. Gradually, we'd grant citizenship to the best and most important barbarians, just to keep them from complaining. But we'd never consider them real Romans. Provincial governance fell to magistrates we'd elect here and send there. And, by the way, if you wanted to run for office or participate in elections, assuming you had citizenship, you had to come to Rome. Elections happened here. Period. Yes, Rome didn't seek expansion, but here's the thing. Rome definitely didn't want to be surrounded by hostile independent states. The city wanted to live among friends. So, for assistance and services rendered, Rome generously bestowed the status of friend and ally of the Roman people on surrounding kings and chiefs. And, naturally, Rome always helped its friends when troubles arose. Here's an example. Far to the east, Syrian king Antiochus captured Egypt. He probably didn't want to swallow it whole, too much to digest. Plunder, internal chaos, and some disputed territories would suffice. But Egypt's king held the status of friend and ally of the Roman people. Rome sent a consular, someone who'd once held consul rank, a very respected politician. Gaius Popilius Linus, accompanied not by an army, but by a few lictors, his ceremonial guards, and a walking stick he leaned on, being quite elderly. So, this Roman magistrate, walking stick and few gentlemen in togas, arrive at Antiochus's camp, surrounded by tens of thousands of soldiers. Nobody's hostile, yet. They're third-party envoys, after all. Before his entire army and nobility, Antiochus greets the ambassador and extends his hand. Linus responds by handing him a message. Read this first. Antiochus reads, "Cease war with Ptolemy immediately. Between the lines, get out of Egypt, go home." This wasn't Rome, but Egypt's king was a friend and ally of the Roman people. Go home, Syrian. Antiochus wanted to convene a council, discuss the decision and consequences, maybe shift responsibility onto others' shoulders. Then Linus pulls an incredibly bold move. With his walking stick, he draws a circle around the king and says, "If you step out of this circle without giving an answer, it means war." Everyone watches to see how the king will respond to such an insult. Antiochus silently swallows it. He and his entire army go home. Linus, walking stick and lictors head to Cyprus, where they also chase out an army, like shooing away kittens. That's how profitable it was to be a friend and ally of the Roman people. Yes, Rome cared for its friends, and it didn't forget friends' children. When a friend died leaving 3 heirs, Rome cared for each young friend. Any of them could come to the city and complain about another. Rome was ready to judge everyone fairly. So when Massinissa, first king of united Numidia, died, Rome cared for all his friends' children. But the kingdom wasn't divided among his 3 sons. Instead, power was divided. One got the treasury, another the courts, the third the army. We know of no conflicts between the brothers. But here's the thing. After 4 years of joint rule, the 2 younger brothers suddenly died of illness, one after another. I'm not suggesting anything. I have no sources. Anyway, the sole surviving son, Micipsa, happily ruled united Numidia for almost 30 more years. After his death, he similarly divided, or wanted to divide, Numidia among his sons, Yempsel, Adherbal, and our story's hero, Jugurtha. The king favored the first 2 and didn't much like the third. He had 2 flaws. First, he was illegitimate. Second, he wasn't biological. Micipsa adopted Jugurtha, one of his brother's sons, very late in life. By then, Jugurtha had gained massive popularity in the kingdom, and the rapidly aging Micipsa simply feared he'd stage a coup and seize power. The king hoped that, given his piece of the pie, Jugurtha would calm down and prefer a bird in hand. Jugurtha grew up smart, brave, and hugely popular in the army, possibly due to his origins. Unlike his cousins, he wasn't born to a noble Numidian or wealthy Carthaginian merchant, but to a daughter of a Gaetulian tribal chief. The army recruited from these harsh tribespeople, and obviously there was at least mild conflict between the tribes living near the Sahara and the soft city hipsters making money from trade. Plus, Jugurtha was much older than the king's biological sons, entering his prime and gaining popularity much earlier. Of course, Micipsa recognized the threat early and tried to eliminate it. No, not with assassins. Heavens no. Family blood, how could he? Besides, it might cause civil war. His brother's untimely deaths had exhausted the convenient death quota. So 16 years before his death, the king sent Jugurtha with Numidian cavalry to help Rome besieging Numantia, capital of a Celtiberian Spanish tribe that wasn't thrilled about living under Roman rule. The idea: remove the popular commander from court to diminish his influence. Nice bonus, Jugurtha might die in war. He's young, hot-headed, eager for battle. Fingers crossed for the Numantians. But something went wrong. For 2 years, the young commander helped besiege the city. He shared food and drinks with young Roman politicians. He joined the inner staff of Roman army commander Scipio Aemilianus, who distinguished the Numidian for bravery and intelligence. He made many friends. Among others, he met some of today's story's heroes: Gaius Memmius, a young orator dreaming of a legal career, sons of ancient patrician families, aristocrats to the bone; Quintus Caecilius Metellus and Marcus Aemilius Scaurus; and a young, ambitious provincial who knew how to dream. Also supported and distinguished by Scipio Aemilianus, this young man was named Gaius Marius. I don't know if friendship bound them, but for 2 years they fought together, celebrated victories and shared defeats. And Jugurtha began hearing voices. No, not schizophrenia. 3 main culprits: money, money, and money. To start climbing Rome's career ladder, the path of honor, you could begin from different angles, but first you had to serve in the army. Any Roman wanting a career and Senate seat had to complete something like military training, demonstrate skill and preparation on the Campus Martius, and serve at least 10 years in the forces, or at least declare readiness for recruitment. They might not take you due to health or too many volunteers. The highest rung during this service was military tribune. Each legion had 6 military tribunes who took turns commanding soldiers for 2 months each. Plus, the position was half elective. The People's Assembly elected 24 military tribunes who were then distributed among legions. If Rome raised more than the 4 standard legions always maintained, and tribunes ran short, the army commander personally appointed the missing ones. But this merry-go-round of legion command, with tribunes often being people of, shall we say, limited abilities, didn't always positively affect battle results during critical moments. So, in our time, for especially important cases, army commanders appointed legates from delegate, who gently pushed incompetent tribunes aside and commanded legions themselves. Tribunes got advisory functions and separate units. The army was packed with respectable people's kids heading for the Senate. Some spent time drinking and whoring around. Others, though not great soldiers, had good enough noses to sniff out opportunities. And the illegitimate son of a Numidian king, capable and popular in the army, was one such opportunity. They befriended him, generously shared wine and asked all sorts of questions, like, "Hey, what happens to Numidia after your uncle dies? Those 2 brats will rule. But you're so brave, talented, Smart. You won't get anything. We could be friends. Friends help each other. I'm from an influential patrician family, such and such clan. Let's be friends and exchange gifts. I'll give you my family's influence and support in Rome. And you? Well, something to your taste. These voices around Jugurtha spoke so loudly and numerously that even Scipio Aemilianus couldn't stand it and personally talked to him. He urged patience and suggested being Rome's friend officially, not privately. Don't buy from a few what belongs to many. In excessive haste, money might drag you into the abyss. The siege of Numantia ended in Roman victory in 133 BCE. Brothers in arms from Scipio's staff scattered to build careers, while Jugurtha returned to Numidia. Micipsa probably regretted relying on the Numantians more than once. Covered in glory and army admiration, Jugurtha now posed such a threat that eliminating him was impossible. But Jugurtha made no sudden moves. He patiently awaited the elderly king's death while strengthening his position in Numidia. He didn't forget to correspond with Roman friends. Those friends were busy building their lives. We're especially interested in provincial Gaius Marius's career. Scipio Aemilianus gave him glowing recommendations. Plus, Marius's parents were his clients. The client institution dated back to clan relationships, originally about land cultivation principles, but that was long ago. Now a client was primarily a patron's political capital. Clients accompanied patrons to the forum, supported them and their representatives in elections, served under them in the forces. Patrons ransomed captured or dependent clients, provided any help if clients asked. Basically, an Italian mafia godfather institution. Honestly, very similar. Importantly, clients were hereditary. Gaius Marius's equestrian class parents were clients of the very ancient and extensive patrician Metellus family. These respectable people accompanied Marius's career and considered him family. They promoted him to military tribune. Despite nobody in Rome having seen him, he won these elections and served under a Metellus in the Balearic Islands, Spanish Mediterranean islands, Ibiza, Majorca, Menorca. There he honed military talents and got his share of spoils. Returning to Italy, he first lost local elections in Arpinum. Nobody remembered him there. But he won election as quaestor in Rome. Quaestors handled accounting, kept books in the city and army, ran the mint, swore in elected magistrates. Most importantly, quaestors were the first magisterial step on the path of honor, the cursus honorum. After completing 10 years military service, a Roman could run for quaestor. Winning automatically put him in the Senate. Thus, the Arpinum provincial became his family's first senator. But Gaius Marius could dream, and wasn't stopping there. In 120, with Metellus' support, he was elected People's Tribune. As you recall from episode 1, People's Tribunes had veto power and could propose laws to the People's Assembly where all Roman citizens voted. So every influential Senate party tried to seat as many clients as possible as tribunes. The calculation was simple. Our tribunes won't veto our needed bills and won't propose unwanted ones to the People's Assembly. No repeat of the Sulla Sulpicius story. But Marius wasn't running errands forever. He considered himself ready for independent political career. He'd saved from military campaigns, was ambitious and ready to fight. To become notable, he needed to jump from the Metelli's shadow. He had just 1 year. Cursus honorum was strictly regulated. You couldn't hold office every year, mandatory breaks between them. Promising young politicians were carefully watched. Their careers were tracked and discussed in the forum. Listen, in 5 years, several very interesting people will run for praetor. We're in for quite a battle. Special prestige came from completing all steps, holding each office at the minimum possible age. For people like Gaius Marius, not among the brilliant young patricians, it was vital to shine during their term, so that years later, running for the next office, they'd be remembered and get votes. Quaestor wasn't suitable for this. Accountants, clerks, nobody cared. So Marius unexpectedly gave a show. No, he didn't seriously harm the Metelli, but he made inflammatory speeches, denounced senatorial aristocracy, accused them of corruption. He entertained the people. His real legislative contribution was small. Marius changed election rules, trying to make them somewhat more secret. Vote buying and electoral corruption were everywhere. But here's the thing, respectable people spending money wanted to protect their investments. None wanted someone walking the forum with a pouch, collecting bribes while promising to vote for 20 different candidates for the same office. So at elections, voters walked through narrow passages under watchful eyes and ears, observing how and for whom they voted. Marius widened this passage and moved the voting area farther. Voting booths hadn't arrived yet, but monitoring voters became harder. Romans especially enjoyed verbal sparring between Marius and his brother-in-arms, Marcus Aemilius Scaurus. This patrician from a respected, influential family was close friends with another Numantia siege comrade, Quintus Sicilius Metellus. Both were only slightly older than Marius, but from respected families, so they climbed the cursus honorum faster and easier. Plus, they shared a common goal, protecting respectable people's interests from upstart, new men like Gaius. Specifically, Scaurus criticized Marius's bill because it violated traditions. Some Arpanum nobody shouldn't come here telling us Romans how to vote. After the required gap year, Marius ran for plebeian aedile, whose duties included organizing public games. He was young, emboldened by his tribunate, full of hope. He got crushed. First, the respected and influential Metelli didn't miss the chance to slap down their rebellious client. Second, Romans didn't appreciate Gaius's bright performance. Yes, watching Scaurus and Marius's verbal battles was amusing, granted, but ultimately, this outsider was biting the hand that fed his family for years. Ungrateful little punk, in a word. But Marius got lucky. Just a year later, barely squeaking by in last place, but Marius was elected praetor. He had a good military career. Scipio Aemilianus supported him. Yes, the Metelli business was ugly, but Marius's year running for praetor was the year of Rome's most horrific corruption scandal, which I'll describe shortly. The people's tribune who protested and spoke against respected, influential people's corruption got extra votes from scandal-outraged Romans. He might be ungrateful, might be a new man, but at least he wasn't one of these crooks. Basically, Marius drew a winning lottery ticket as congratulations on victory. Right after election, Gaius was accused of corruption and voter bribery. This was actually the most common political combat element. Didn't matter how much truth was in the accusations. What mattered was they existed. You speak against corruption? But you were accused of corruption yourself. The technique's apparently called dead fish, and still works successfully today. Amusingly, as praetor, Marius supposedly presided over the corruption court. A praetor in Rome was a pre-consular position. When Rome was tiny, 2 consuls successfully handled everything, needing no help. As the city grew, they weren't enough. So they started electing a praetor, someone to whom consuls transferred some authority within strictly defined bounds. By our story's time, Rome elected 6 praetors, their authority bounds called provinces. For example, a praetor exercising consular power in corruption courts, that's his province. Another praetor's province was courts for foreign citizens. A third's was ruling instead of the consul in Sicily. Sicily was his province. But Rome grew and expanded. 6 praetors weren't nearly enough to fill all vacant positions. By our story's time, Rome had over 10 provinces. So Rome had long established, even usurped by the Senate, the institution of prorogation, extending or granting authority to people to exercise power in praetors and consuls' names. Each year, senators, by special decree, extended current year consuls and praetors' authority and distributed them to provinces for the next year. Praetors became pro-praetors, consuls became pro-consuls. Thus, consuls exercised supreme military power domestically, while praetors, proconsuls and propraetors acted in their name in provinces, courts, and annexed territories. In practice, almost all newly elected praetors went to courts, while propraetors and proconsuls went to territorial provinces. This created an unpleasant situation. They all exercised supreme military power in their provinces on the consul's behalf, meaning, if conducting military operations, they commanded armies. Meaning, if conquering lands of some rebellious or attacking tribe, they personally received a third of everything captured as commanders by right. So Roman politicians, who throughout their political careers only spent enormous sums, viewed provinces as places to improve their financial position. Nobody particularly objected. Those with military talents, or who thought they had military talents, if nobody attacked the province, provoked local tribes themselves and waged war. The rest extorted and squeezed every drop from their provinces. Now you understand why the Numantians rebel. After a year judging corruption cases, Marius drew a second winning ticket, getting by lot further Spain province, southern modern Spain and Portugal. There he organized a campaign against bandits and some rebellious tribes, conducting it with his characteristic brilliance. He acquired numerous silver mines. From this point, Gaius Marius wasn't just someone with savings under the mattress. Now he was fabulously wealthy. And this rich man returned to Rome. The next senior position was consul. But how to reach it? Most of the city, despite all his money, still saw him as just an ungrateful Metellus client and provincial. So Gaius Marius decided to marry. Meet a representative of the most ancient patrician family. They trace descent from a goddess herself. But lately, dark times have fallen on this family. They have many sons, dividing and subdividing their fortune. Pitiful crumbs remain, not enough for careers befitting young patricians. He languishes on the Senate's backbenches, forced to stay silent at meetings. He wants to provide for his two sons, and he has what many other impoverished patricians lack: tradition and two daughters. His family is known for never, ever selling daughters to rich men. If they marry, their grooms deserve it, deserve these distant descendants of a goddess who, legend says, will bring their husbands happiness. His name was Gaius Julius Caesar. His grandson would become history's most famous Roman, but that would be impossible without Gaius Marius's money. Deal made. The Julii Caesars got money, allowing their sons to pursue previously closed positions. They got help and support from the fabulously wealthy Marius gunning for consul, and Marius was no longer a Metellus client. Arm in arm with his beautiful wife, he entered Roman society's highest circle. Since this was his first time, he wasn't buying a wife. The Julii Caesars don't do that. Marius deserved it. The Metelli still tried, dismissively considering him a client out of inertia, but for the rest of Rome, not anymore. Now Gaius Marius was ready. Fully armed, he met year 111 and the events described at this episode's beginning. To understand why they happened, let's return 7 years to Numidia. Marius's fun tribunate year just ended, with his Senate clashes with Scaurus. Gaius still awaited wealth, electoral defeat, and the Metelli's slap. Scaurus left to govern a province while Quintus Caecilius Metellus as aedile entertained the Roman mob. Meanwhile, Jugurtha finally got what he'd waited for so long. Numidian King Micipsa died. As I mentioned, trying to protect his sons from Jugurtha's ambitions, he adopted him. wrote him into his will, and asked Rome to guarantee all his son's rights. But the king's biological children weren't planning to honor those rights. They thought division should be between two, and they weren't accepting Jugurtha. They didn't care about Jugurtha's army authority or popularity in the country. The bastard wouldn't rule. Besides, he'd tricked his way into the will. Had father been sound of mind, he'd never have allowed it. No division of treasury, courts, and army was happening. The brothers came to the meeting trying to carve all Numidia into 3 pieces. But they couldn't agree. First, the younger, hot-headed Hiempsal insulted Jugurtha. In his opinion, he was probably just stating facts. Blunt, "You're a bastard." And since it was getting late, Hiempsal went to spend the night at a noble Numidian's palace. But Jugurtha hadn't wasted those 15 years. The nobility carefully checked which way the wind blew and understood they'd have to choose sides. And Jugurtha, now the legitimate king's son with massive army popularity and Roman connections, was a pretty obvious candidate for support. That night, unknowns burst into the palace. Hiempsal was murdered in his bed. 2 brothers remained. Adherbal showed admirable foresight and immediately fled to Rome, loudly calling for justice along the way. Remember, Rome cares for its friends and their children. Rome sent a senatorial commission, led by consular Lucius Opimius, to investigate. This very respected politician, in his own opinion, had worked very hard for Rome's glory and deserved reward. Many other representatives of respected families travelled with him. Jugurtha hospitably received the commission, and like a major corporation entertaining inspectors, Jugurtha gave the Romans a tour. The commission reached a fair decision. The kingdom was honestly divided in half. Adherbal got the eastern part with the capital and Sahara's lifeless sands, while Jugurtha got the rich, fertile western part. Hiempsal's murder was declared the work of local, unknown thugs, and the gift-laden senators returned to Rome. Harmony should reign in Numidia. In Rome, outrage reigned instead. Such blatant and openly unjust decision raised many questions. Have they completely lost all shame stealing like this? And precisely on this wave of outrage and scandal, Marius managed to jump onto the departing praetor train, snatching a winning ticket at the last second. But harmony in Numidia didn't last long. Already in 113, Jugurtha started war. He quickly defeated Adherbal's forces, drove him into the capital, and besieged it. Another commission urgently left Rome, this time led by Jugurtha's incorruptibly reputable Numantia siege comrade, Marcus Aemilius Scaurus. He demanded the king submit to Roman decision and return to his part of Numidia. But Jugurtha had waited too long. His patience was exhausted. At arm's length behind Cirta's fortress walls was his cousin's head, separated from the body, and he'd become Numidia's sole ruler. Besides, those Roman voices always ready to take gifts and defend anything had taught him to simply despise greedy Romans. He didn't just refuse, he captured the city, executed his brother, and slaughtered all inhabitants, including Romans and Italics. Year 111 arrived. Rome declared war on Jugurtha. Rome assembled an army under consul Lucius Calpurnius Bestia, another respected aristocrat from an ancient plebeian family. As his legate, who'd help command troops, he appointed incorruptible Marcus Aemilius Scaurus. They landed in Africa, took several cities, collected rich spoils, but here's the thing. Bestia understood war with Jugurtha would drag on. You could get bogged down, lose battles, bury your reputation. Is this what I wanted? Jugurtha, seeing hesitation, sent envoys to the consul. He offered to discuss peace terms, and peace was made. Terms were simple. Jugurtha remained king of all Numidia, paid very small reparations, and transferred a whopping 30 elephants to Rome. And gift-laden Lucius returned to the city. Don't rush to judge Bestia. His decision had a rational kernel. 2 years earlier, Rome first encountered a new European force. Ancient Germanic tribes of Cimbri and Teutons. Long ago they'd left their homeland, the Jutland Peninsula, continental Denmark, and began moving south. I'll tell that story someday. For now, just the gist. In 113, Germanics inflicted terrible defeat on Romans in the Northern Alps. 24,000 Roman legionaries lay dead on the field. The Germanics left, but sooner or later they'd return. Why fight Numidia, thought Bestia. Why lose soldiers? Quick victory over Jugurtha is impossible. Scipio Aemilianus praised him for good reason. Plus, you might lose a battle and sacrifice more legions. Rome desperately needs soldiers. The Roman army only takes citizens who can pay for their own weapons. And we just lost 24,000 such citizens. Reserves are exhausted. There are no soldiers. Jugurtha isn't planning to seize Roman lands. He doesn't threaten us. You can talk and negotiate with him. He's civilized, knows the rules. He wants to be Numidia's king, establish his dynasty there. Well, to hell with it. Let him. But the rational colonel Bestia and Scaurus wanted to present to Rome got slightly spoiled by the simple fact that seemingly surrendered to Rome's mercy Jugurtha paid ridiculous reparations, less than Bestia's gift for making peace. And this rational colonel simply drowned in the outrage of Romans stunned by such audacity. And to people's tribune, in year 111, was elected Gaius Memmius. Defender of common people's rights, supported by the equestrian class, implacable enemy of respected aristocracy. He's sick of senatorial corruption and launching a crusade against it. That's his political platform. He has just 1 year. He must thunder across all Rome, here and now. Thunder, so Rome remembers him for years and elects him to the next office. He accuses every embassy of taking bribes. He accuses even relatively honest Scaurus. Yes, he didn't negotiate with Jugurtha during his embassy, but he was with Bestia, so he took a bribe too. He appeals to Roman citizens, reminding how Jugurtha slaughtered Romans and Italics. What a laughingstock Romans were to senators all these recent years. He demands justice and corruption investigation. But he demands law be followed. He needs neither riot nor revolution, nor senators' bodies on stakes. He's rational. No people's tribune lived long after such attempts. Outraged Rome demands trial, and the Senate must submit. They send a praetor to Numidia, promise Jugurtha safe conduct, and summon him to Rome to testify about bribes. Jugurtha doesn't lose hope of preserving the just-signed peace treaty. After all, he has everything he wants. He needs nothing more. Just needs to push a tiny bit more. He goes to Rome, bringing gifts. He needs Senate ratification of the peace treaty. But if there's a trial convicting Bestia of bribery, forget peace. He can't stay silent at trial. He made peace as the loser. He surrendered to Rome's mercy. He can't proudly stay silent. He must speak. Say everything was honest? In Rome? Now? That would sound like mockery. And the Senate won't ratify peace under Roman pressure. Gaius Memmius calls a forum assembly. He addresses angry citizens, holds them back from violence and riots, demands criminals be judged by Roman law's force. After the tribune's denunciatory speech, the Numidian king himself must speak at the assembly. Many lives will depend on his words. Forum tension is knife-cutting thick. The king rises to answer. Noise instantly dies. But then another people's tribune, Gaius Baebius, jumps from his seat, shouting, "I impose veto! I forbid you to answer, O king!" Jugurtha looks into the eyes of former brother-in-arms Memmius, slightly shrugs and sits back down. Jugurtha's calculation is simple. Memmius supports legal methods. A people's tribune's person is inviolable. Memmius can't silence and expel Baebius from the assembly without breaking law, and without Jugurtha's testimony, by law, there are only suspicions, and the case collapses. Assembly over. Outraged Romans go home. Gaius Baebius explains to anyone who'll listen that he was saving justice. Jugurtha could have lied. Jugurtha could have smeared innocent citizens. He could be a tool for one Senate party fighting another, and he, Baebius, only wanted to prevent this. Truth is, nobody wants to listen. His career's over. Though Jugurtha's gift should last him a lifetime. And in influential senators' houses, voices sound. This time, Numidian voices. They offer friendship and ask to push peace through the Senate in exchange for gifts. But from the harmonious chorus of Numidian voices, one stands out. It belongs to the king's cousin, Massiva, supporter of executed Adherbal. He'd long ago fled to Rome, offering his friendship. You help me, I'll help you. The mob won't crucify you. You'll side with the righteous, and I'll take the Numidian throne with your help, and be your friend, a much better friend than Jugurtha. I'll give the same gifts, without bringing such problems. Jugurtha understands things are bad. This voice must be silenced. Jugurtha's closest, most devoted friend Bomilcar should solve the problem. Massiva walks through Rome. He radiates health, rubbing his hands. In his dreams he sees himself on the Numidian throne. Suddenly he stumbles, drops to his knees, falls on Roman pavement. Blood pools around him. In broad daylight, Massiva is murdered on Rome's streets. His killer flees, but the crowd catches him. He immediately names Bomilcar. But it doesn't matter. Everyone understands who's behind the murder. Jugurtha hastily sends Bomilcar to Numidia. But forget peace now. Rome demands blood and war. Numidians insistently suggest returning. Casting a last glance at Rome, Jugurtha says, "Corrupt city. It will fall when it finds a buyer." And Rome assembles a new army under year 110's consul, Spurius Postumius Albinus. He appoints his brother Aulus Postumius Albinus as legate and goes to war. He energetically prepared, but arriving in Africa did almost nothing. He proved completely lacking military talents, unlike Jugurtha, who dragged out time waiting for opportunity. And he got it. Consul Spurius left for Rome. Rome retained many vestiges from when it was a tiny city. One such vestige was requiring at least one consul present to oversee next year's magistrate elections, and his colleague consul died of old age. Spurius decided not to delegate to praetors and left, leaving his brother to command in his name with propraetor authority. He proved equally incompetent, but much more energetic. And he went to besiege a city where, rumor said, Jugurtha kept his treasury. Gold's glitter blinded him. The cunning Numidian waited until Aulus ran out of supplies, appeared at the city, attacked, and immediately retreated. Burning to capture Jugurtha and gain fame throughout Rome, Aulus Postumius Albinus, like a complete idiot, chases after the Numidian fox, going farther and farther. Without supplies, his men began grumbling and wavering, and voices arose in the Roman army. Jugurtha suddenly stopped, and one night, his soldiers burst into the Roman camp. Jugurtha's gifts weren't just for senators. Libyan mercenaries the Romans had recruited for war, along with bribed Roman deserters, switched to Jugurtha's side and opened the camp gates. Massacre followed, killing up to a third of the Roman force. Those who could flee fortified on a nearby hill, and next day, Jugurtha offered humiliating peace. Aulus, who had authority to act on the consul's behalf, accepted all peace terms. He must leave Numidia within 10 days, but first, remnants of his army pass under the yoke. This was a very, very ancient and very insulting ritual. 2 spears stuck in the ground, a third tied across as crossbeam. The defeated army in full, including officers and commanders, stripped nearly naked, and one by one, practically single file, passed under the spear. Meanwhile, victors spat, humiliated, and beat the defeated. Those refusing or not showing proper submission were simply killed. It's still unclear why Jugurtha made Romans go through this. Maybe Jugurtha finally believed in his lucky star. Maybe his hot blood couldn't resist, and he wanted terrible revenge. But I think you can imagine Rome's reaction. People's Tribune of year 109, Gaius Mamilius Limatanus, organized trial against all bribed by Jugurtha. Unexpectedly, someone once accused of the same crime managed to sneak into one of 3 judge positions: Marcus Aemilius Scaurus. The Mamilius Commission under Scaurus's chairmanship convicted many of those Roman voices. Not all, of course. Scaurus softened the blow for respectable people as much as possible. But evidence was unnecessary now. Suspicion sufficed. All even slightly notable figures in this story got hit. Head of the First Numidian Commission, distinguished consular Lucius Opimius. Consul of year 111, Calpurnius Bestia. And consul of year 110, Spurius Postumius, who took responsibility for his brother, were stripped of property and exiled from Rome. Such mass exile of former consuls had never happened in Rome. And for consul of the next year, 109, who would command in war, they elected the absolutely incorruptible, honest, and unbending aristocrat, Quintus Caecilius Metellus. But this wasn't a triumph for respectable people. This was Rome uniting against a common enemy. As his right hand, chief legate, the man who, thanks to his undisputed military talents, would lead soldiers on the battlefield and pull Quintus Caecilius's chestnuts from the fire. Even before elections, Metellus promised to appoint the one who'd attacked respectable people's corruption, the one who was a new man, the one distinguished by Scipio Aemilianus himself, his former client Gaius Marius. In next year's campaign under Africa's hot sun, 2 would meet who once shared victories and defeats, sorrows and glory under Numantia's walls. Respected Roman aristocrat Quintus Caecilius Metellus and Numidian king Jugurtha would meet in struggle where the victory awaits glory and the loser, disgrace. But new man Gaius Marius wasn't planning to pull chestnuts for Metellus. He knew troops in Africa were demoralized and humiliated by passing under the yoke. Most of the year would be needed to restore discipline among them. He knew Bestia was right. No quick victory over Jugurtha was possible. He had a plan to push aside his former patron, that arrogant aristocrat, and personally claim the main prize: victory over the Numidian fox. And for a time, become the first man in Rome.